Hey guys, Jaquan Kennedy here with Summit Ministries. Just want to spend the next few minutes just kind of talking about the theme that we had for August, which was opposition to vision. Senior pastor Henry Eggleston came from Genesis 37 and 5, and just want to just talk to you over the next few minutes and a little bit more of a detail, kind of a word God gave me regarding it. So, in my studying and trying to kind of break things down and kind of understand it in a practical way, God brought to my attention that vision needs three things. It needs provision, it needs protection, and it needs pruning. I said, wow, okay. Those are, it's not just a cute 3 P's to use, but they're actual things that are true when you break it down. So, just to give background story, Genesis 37 and 5, this is Joseph, who is in the company of his mom, his dad, and his 11 brothers, and he makes it known the dreams that he's having. He shares them with his family. His family in turn hate him because of the visions that God has given him. So as we come to know, the brothers plot to initially kill him. And that does not happen. They end up, what they do by putting him in a pit causes him to be sold to Egypt, and life progresses from there. So, and just looking at this, the first thing that we look at is provision. And, we say that God provided the things that were needed for Joseph, even in a famine, this word, vision, was spoken, over the life of Joseph at a very early stage in his life. So when you look at the situation, you say, wait a minute, God wasn't providing provision for him that early on. No, but what happens is God speaks a word over our lives, and then it has to walk itself out over the course of time. Now, in all actuality, provision was being made for him. See, we always think that it's about finances, but provision really is anything that helps you, anything that really essentially helps you to accomplish a goal. Okay, if God gave you a vision, anything that provides for that goal to be completed out, or that calling on your life to be completed. So if it's the provision of providing people to bless you as a resource, if it's if it is actual finances, maybe it's a job or an opportunity that God has given you to be able to carry out that thing that He's spoken over your life. But that's ultimately what provision is. So when we look at that, the manifestation of this of the provision took place during the trials and the tribulations of his life. Okay, that's another misconception that we have in the church, and just in life in general, is that, okay, because I have a promising future, or God has spoken something over my life, that it's going to be without trial and tribulation, that I should just get it. I'm entitled to it just because God spoke it over my life. Well, you're entitled to it because God did speak it over your life, but there are some things, again, as we spoke, that have to take place in order for this vision to be carried out. So provision, and we saw God provide, okay, in the palace. We saw God provide in jail, and we saw God provide even in famine. Okay, so excuse me. We saw God provide in the palace because, number one, we saw how God elevated Joseph. Okay, he elevated him, and he was second in command over everything. Okay, that was just the beginning. That was a taste of where he would be later on. So again, that was still provision because God provided resources and opportunity for the goal to be carried out. Now, again, he had to go through some things, trials and tribulations, but it was all preparation for what God was going to carry out in his life at a later date. Okay, we saw that even in jail, who is made to be in control over the people in jail? Why? Because God was making provision for when he got out and the ultimate goal of what he was to carry out. The provision. God provided an opportunity even in jail for him to get a taste of what he was going to do when he got out. And then last but not least, the famine. Again, God provided. He now, you can say, from a financial standpoint, so to speak, God provided. God said that there was going to be a famine, but God allowed all of the things that he had been through, okay, to be provision for him to be able to handle, okay, the things that were going to come, the next 14 years in Egypt, okay? So there we have that. The next thing we can take a look at, as we've just talked about provision, the next thing we can take a look at is protection. You know, the hard truth is God gives you a vision, and sometimes it's not meant for everybody to know about. It's not meant for everybody, two things, for them to hear about it, and it's not meant for everybody to see this vision that you speak of, okay? Number one, when we talk about for people to hear about it, sometimes you got to keep your vision to yourself. You know, God showed it to you. And I believe this. When there are going to be people who are going to be a part of your vision, God shows it to them as well. I'm going to say that again. I believe that when God has given you a vision, when he wants other people to be a part of that vision, he gives them the vision as well. Okay? So that's the thing about sometimes other people hearing about your vision. Sometimes people are not meant to hear it. It's not meant for their ears. Okay? Because sometimes people take what they hear and they tear it down before it can even manifest. Okay? But another thing is people being able to see that vision. You know, because the truth of the matter is sometimes the visions that God gives us, they're too much even for us to comprehend and to understand. We can't even see how God is going to do it. Okay? Let alone those who, even if they are supposed to be a part of the vision in some way, that it may not be meant for them to actually see it in the same manner in which you are. Because again, people tear down things. Sometimes people will tear it down again because they can't see it themselves, and let alone us being able to see it for our own selves. And sometimes vision, and again, because it has to be protected, there are things that people will say regarding your vision that you don't need to hear in its conception, in the conception of your vision. Because again, people will tear it down. So that's why it has to be protected. Okay? And that's why we saw that Joseph had to be removed from his family. Because he prematurely had shared it with them. And they hated him for it. They hated it for it. So, the last thing is the pruning, okay? And it kind of goes back into two things I just said. Number one, because sometimes we can't even see the thing that God is trying to do through us, the vision that God has given us. So from a protection standpoint, God has to prune us so that we don't mess things up our own selves. But also in the things of saying the trials and the tribulations that we have to go through. Again, there was the palace time that God had to take Joseph through. There was the jail time that God had to take Joseph through, and then there was the actual famine, okay, that he had to go through. And I'd like to believe in each stage there was the pruning. In particular, the stages of the palace time and the jail time. Okay, the palace time I say because, you know, he went through something to be, you know, it was kind of like, you can take it like, God, did you really just set me up? You know, you promote me only to demote me. Okay, but how many know God doesn't work that way? All right, but we see how he was promoted, then he was lied on. Okay, that lie led him to being in jail. Okay, but even from the jail time, the pruning of you blessing other people and other people not doing what they say that they will do. Oh, I'll remember you, but they forget about you. The idea, and many of us can relate to this, that you do for people and they get elevated, but when they get elevated, they forget about you oh so easily. Okay, but lastly, I'd like to even say in the famine, God was pruning Joseph. What do you mean? God had blessed him and he had elevated him once again, and he was never to be taken off of that. He was never to be demoted again. But you know what? Watch this. The idea that the same people who pushed you to where you are and who you could initially say caused you to go through all of the things that you went through, you now have to look them in the eye and do the right thing by them. Because how many know that the real test is when God elevates you, and when you have gone through, people have lied on you, people have misused you, people have abused you, people have hated you, people have wanted to off you, that God will put you right in front of these same people just to see how you're going to react. Because the real power is shown when you have authority, when you are elevated. So, the opposition to vision will come. Doesn't change the outcome of the vision that God gave you. But again, there are three things that a vision needs. It needs provision. It needs protection. And we must be pruned. God bless you.